Welcome to The Collective, where every conversation ignites a new perspective. Join us as we delve into the journeys of remarkable individuals, explore the art of growth, resilience, and the power of a shared mission. This is your gateway to insights and inspiration as we strive to be better together. Hey everybody, welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am super stoked. We got Jamie returning, we got Tim returning, we got Hunter returning. We haven't seen these guys in quite a while, so I am stoked for this conversation. Now, while I am stoked, you should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails when we go live, which is, of course, Fridays for the Gold Mine, or for the Collective, and Wednesdays for the Gold Mine. I am pumped for this conversation. We're going to be talking about the mind-body interface, and right off the bat, let's get some intros. So, Tim, 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
What's going on, guys? Tim DeMaio. I'm living in DC, Navy veteran, intelligence community veteran, owner of Berserker Boards, and new nonprofit founder.
Bam. I like it. Jamie, how about yourself?
Jamie Scott, New Zealander, living in Austria, tail end of a head cold, so I'll sound Australian to you all. As per the pre-on-air conversation, I'm a tier nothing, a sports nutritionist and strength coach.
Tier nothing, I love it. Hunter, how about yourself?
Same, also tier nothing. Civilian background in human performance. Spent over a decade in special operations on the civilian and strength and conditioning side. Currently the VP of training in an organization that helps create coaches and fitness for professionals as veterans transition out. So yeah, excited to be here and dive into today. Appreciate you guys.
Love it. And yeah, a little company, the University of Health Performance. Just a small little thing. Sean, how's California treating you right now?
Well, it doesn't require toques, I will say that. Let's just get right to it. In respect to tier levels, we were talking about it in the green room. If the fellas are categorizing themselves as tier 0, then I'm going to categorize myself as tier -8, because that was so long ago, that whole tier game, that right now I'm probably at the -8 levels. So I don't think anyone on this show is a big deal in respect to tiers anymore. I just think we're all a bunch of dudes who are trying to be helpful to our community and do it right.
Speak for yourself. I'm obviously over level 9,000. I mean, seriously, come on now. You guys thinking? Well, let's get into this conversation then, because I really want to see where you guys' minds went when I sent you the emails super late last night on mind-body interface. What were the first things that clicked into your head when you first read that and were like, oh, this is going to be neat? Where did you go? Hunter, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
Yeah, for me, it goes into allowing ourselves that chance to even listen to our body. I think so many people within the space have a tendency to go and do. And I've adapted even the mantra to myself at times, as far as you're not here to feel. And so actually taking that moment to kind of notice, dial in, what are we actually feeling? What are we noticing? And then deciding to make a choice on all of those things. So really being able to actually just become aware in the first place.
I like that. That's a great place to start. Tim, what were your first thoughts?
Yeah, how do I follow that up? That's great. So the first thing I thought was just how the mind and the body correlate and work with each other, and how necessary and cohesion they need to have. And just with my experiences over the past couple of years getting out of the military, and how I've really focused on my mind and soul, and it just ties everything together with the body. So it'll be interesting. We'll have some good talks.
Oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. Jamie, what was your first thought?
I'm not allowed to swear. My first thought was like, what the hell am I going to come up with here? I kind of ended up going down the pathway of just kind of thinking, like, in terms of my experience, I've always leaned more towards the physical side of it. And for me, if I feel my body has the strength and the capacity to do what I need to do, then the mind kind of follows that. And I know some people kind of operate in reverse, where they're very kind of mind driven. But for me, it was the physiology of what I can do and what I want to do that kind of drags the mind along, if you will.
I'm liking this because you never know who's going to be in charge on any given day. Sean, what's your first thoughts on this?
It is that the subject is very big. The mind-body connection is a massive subject. And so I'm going to do it this way. Currently, I'm in California hanging out with my old friend that I've known since 1987 when we first started working together in, coincidentally, Tucumán, because it's freaking Red Friday. And so, remember, everyone deployed Friday. And so I'm hanging out with him now for the last 2 days. And we both have minds. We both have bodies. And so we can look at ourselves as individuals as to try to understand ourselves through our own mind and our own body connection. But what I've been doing over the last 2 days is understanding my mind and my body through the relationship with my friend's mind and his body in how he's evolved since I was here a year ago. When I was here a year ago, he'd just come through his second cancer, crushed it like a champion, and I was here to hang out with him to make sure everything was good to go. And so he's come a long way in the last year with his mind and his body. But he's just like one story of all the thousands of stories that I'm aware of individuals who understand what it takes to connect your mind to your body, to make progress, to create outcomes, to understand you were here and now you're here, and there's a delta, there's a difference in who you are now versus who you were then. So the last 2 days have been really good for me to see my good friend flourish as I expected, given his background. He was also in Tier 1 Special Operations, and I would expect nothing less of him. Now, to my point, everyone's got a mind and everyone's got a body. In my circle, everyone that I know is a performer, understands the mind-body relationship to enough of a degree that they are creating outcomes, and we're all used to that. But not everyone hangs out with people who understand how to create outcomes, how to perform at a higher level, how to use your mind and your body together to create, I'll say it, greatness within your life. And so I'm used to it. My friends are all like large and in charge. And so I know not everyone gets to hang out with large and in chargers on their regular. So hopefully during this conversation today, we'll be able to explore perhaps the extent of what is perhaps normal versus the abnormal, if that makes sense.
I'm tracking this for sure. As you guys were talking, it made me start thinking about the fact that the not only the individual mind-body experience of ourselves, like you're saying, Sean, but how we connect to other people's minds and bodies through what we do, through what we say, through what we engage in. The collective is a perfect example of this. I've heard from many a person who have completely changed their lives since getting involved in this community or in another community or in another thing that has been a bit of a bridge between their own mind and body for it. And I'm loving where this is going, and I want to get some just what do you got, Sean?
Sorry, I'd be remiss if I didn't add this. Like, I've gained from the collective over the last 2 years. Like, I'm a different person. Like, I thought that I had a few things in my back pocket, skills and tools and abilities. But over the last 2 years, the amount of people that I've had the opportunity to talk to, like this panel as an example, like I can look at each one of these guys and think, I'm not a big deal. And I've got a lot of gaps in my life. I need to pick up my pace. I need to do better. I need to perform at a higher level. I need to catch up to these guys. And that keeps me honest by understanding my world through conversing or meeting people who I hold as a higher level to my understanding of a lot of things. So I think over the last couple of years, I've put myself in the room with people who I strive to be to some degree. So I hope nobody gets it twisted. Whatever levels every person on this panel has achieved in their life with a mind-body connection, we all can do more to do it better.
I'm on jump in right there, and I love what you said, Sean, but you're also cutting yourself a little short, because I watch your Instagram videos of you at your age mountain biking, doing your martial arts, doing all this stuff and staying active and healthy and fit, and that's motivating for me, and that's inspiring for me, who I am younger than you. So I love what you do, and everybody could learn from everyone, so it's awesome.
It is fun to watch him rip down a hill. Freaking crazy. I do have a question on just that in general, of like, where do you guys come to on what Sean's talking about in terms of the ability to grow, but also look back on it and see that growth to help develop that next level? Hunter, I'm going to come to you.
Yeah, I think that the recognition is huge. It's, you know, you look at the people that you surround yourself with. I mean, the cliche is like, you are the person or the 5 closest people that you spend the most time with. Sean, that, you know, kind of referencing that, and it can be really easy to lose sight of those when you surround yourself with greatness, so to speak. But I think what can even be more challenging is when people are constantly striving for that greatness, to then, to your point, even to look back at the delta, to look at the change that has truly happened, the growth that has happened physically, the growth that has happened mentally. And so I think those are really unique points, I think, that can just get lost in the grand scheme of things. And so that whole connection piece between the mind, the body, and those that we surround ourselves with, I think can just get lost without taking the time to even reflect and look at where the changes actually have happened.
Could not agree more with that one. Jamie, you got any points on this?
Yeah, like I think when we talk about the topic of the mind-body connection, it's easy to kind of get lost in talking about our own mind and our own bodies, and lose the idea that we are social creatures and we are part of a collective. And so when we talk about the mind-body connection, it can be someone else's mind and the things that we pick up from them and what they project, and that the skills and tools that they bring to the table, that can have an impact in connecting with our body as well. So it's not just our head's mind talking to our bodies, it's other people's minds talking to our bodies as well, and making that connection. So that's what I've picked up from Sean's wee piece there.
I'm liking this a lot. Tim, what do you got?
No, same. Nothing really much to add to that.
Raj, I have a question then on that, is that how do we then build the connection? Because obviously if people are, you know, out there struggling to create a mind-body connection within themselves, but that would then lead to a difficulty creating a connection between other people as well. So where do you guys think, like, let's start right at the beginning, first steps. How do you start building a good mind-body connection? Jamie, I'm gonna hit you first.
I think defining what the mind is a good place to start. I mean, everyone knows what a body is, but I think you can kind of take it for granted that everyone knows what we're talking about when we talk about the mind. And so, like, applying some sort of organizational structure to that, and, you know, here's my inherent bias as someone who sits more in the kind of the physical well-being space. So I kind of paint the picture of the world in terms of physiology and biochemistry. That's kind of how I tend to see things. So if we kind of break the mind down, like it's got its kind of cognitive operations. So, you know, you're like your attention, your focus, your decision making, your emotional regulation, and then you can start to dive deeper into the real physiological side of things. We start to talk about like the neurological processes. You know, what are your neurotransmitters doing? And through to kind of just your general physiological state. So, like, you know, what is your energy like? What's your energy metabolism and energy management? Because all of those things have an impact on I guess the outputs that we feel, and the outputs that we feel are those things around, you know, what's our attention span like? You know, are we calm and in charge? Are we able to kind of emotionally regulate, or are we kind of throwing a giant tantrum on the ground because, you know, we're well overdue a lie down or a glass of orange juice or something along those lines? So I think kind of a good starting point for people is to really understand when we say mind-body connection, like, what is the mind and what are the attributes of the mind that we're actually connecting to our physical selves.
I was just picturing someone having a fit on the ground and another person bringing a cup of orange juice and being like, here you go, man. This is for you.
Your blood sugar's a little bit low. Like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tim, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, Jamie, he kind of hit it. I'm not very technical and smart, scientific, and all that. I use my buddy Nick, the Flying Hawaiian, who we were talking about earlier, as my example. Harvard senior neuroscientist, freaking ranger, awesome dude. And we were talking the other day, and he's like, "Okay, yeah, we got a bunch of dudes in the community. They got blasted. They have TBIs. They can't. Things don't work how they used to, and they just live with it." And what he was talking about was how you need to educate the community of how the mind works, what it really is, and how the body can overcome some of these obstacles and other things you could implement into you. So that just really clicked with me just now. And without getting too in detail, a few of you know that my wife's battling the stage 4 cancer and all this terrible stuff, but she's focused so much on her mind and putting positivity out there. And it's correlating and coming. Second time I use that word. I never used it in my life. And it's coming back around to her body and helping her with her healing process and being able to recover from the chemo and all that a little bit better, because she is doing all these things and trying to connect and do the yoga, the meditation, the Reiki, and really connect with her mind and spirit. So it's kind of just a full circle type thing.
Love that. Hunter, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, trying to narrow this down. I mean, every time somebody shares, my head goes in 3 different places. And so, one, I think that the point that Tim just brought up, as far as like we can talk to mind, body, referencing, that spirit it is one, first and foremost. Like everything is connected. And then going into like what Jamie's talked about is making sure to define, like, okay, what is the mind? And then even, I think, going a layer deeper, what is the goal? What are we trying to do here? Because I think everybody on this panel is a teacher, is a coach. You've done some sort of training to empower and help others. And so because of that, what is the skill that you're trying to impart on somebody, whether it's physical, whether that's mental, and taking all those to account. So whether we're looking at the different physiological factors that physically affect the mind, we know above a certain heart rate decision-making skills, things speed up, that we become limited on that. So really defining the goals, what we're trying to teach, what we're trying to do. But I think going back to the fact that everything is connected, whether we want to pretend like it is or not.
Could not agree with that more. I've seen so many more examples in my own life of actual oneness. When I am really depressed, my physical body will help carry me through at times when I go to jiu-jitsu or when I go train or do whatever. Just in the fact that the routine of it will pull me along. And then there's, on the opposite spectrum of that, there's been lots of days where my body was broken and my mind has been like, but it's Tuesday, time to go train. Like, all right, here we go again. Sean, you got any thoughts on this?
I do. I'm going to keep it brief, but I'm going to introduce something that is going to change the conversation, I believe. And so we're talking about the mind-body connection, but I think it needs to be tweaked, because really what we have, all of us, we have a mind, we have a body, and we have a brain. And so just as Jamie was referring to the neurobiology, the neuroscience, the prefrontal cortex, the yada, 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 all of the science of things, all the science of the brain, all of the science of your biochemistry, that is not your mind, in my opinion. And so we have our body, we have a brain, and then we have our mind. And what is our mind? Define the mind. And each one of us will give a different definition of what we think the mind is. So I'll just push the envelope a bit more and say that my mind considers my brain as a tool to be able to connect to my own mind and other minds. And so we have our singular mind and we have a collective mind. Currently, I'm parallel processing both of those states. My mind is doing my mind thing, and my mind is working with your minds in a collective fashion. And so I believe, we all have to understand the difference between our brain and our mind. And our mind is more ephemeral. It is more ill-defined. You can't reach out and pour an ounce of mind. And so the value of your mind is based on how much you allow your brain and your body to work together and learn about yourself and learn about others. So I said I keep it brief. I'm going to throw that out, see where it goes.
Sean's our resident rabbit hole digger. He just takes us down some interesting ones. Let's hit Jamie on this one. What do you got?
Oh, I mean, like I agree with Sean there. Like, you know, I think we can get very reductionist in how we kind of think about things. Again, like, you know, my bias is thinking about it from the you know, physiological side of things. But like, you know, the body, the physiology, the brain, like everything that kind of comes together is an integrated system. And then the outputs we see from that integration and what we kind of feel and how we interact and you know, how we relate to the environment around us and the people around us, then that becomes that more ethereal kind of spirit thing that you can't pour it into a cup, you can't touch it, it like flows through your hands, like that sort of thing. That's where that kind of mind comes. But it's the integration of you know, the internal physiology, the external environment, and everything that goes with that. That I think kind of Sean kind of touches on there with that. You know, what is the mind? The thing that we can't touch, we can't feel it, we can't see it, but it's there, and we understand it, and we have connections and so on. So, but it's again, it's that integration of all of those things coming together.
Yeah, and I was thinking about it actually as you were speaking. I was thinking about it in reverse. Was like, what can you take away and still be yourself? Like, there was this great question I heard a long time ago about like an ancient Japanese temple. As beams are replaced, eventually you're going to get to a point that the original building isn't there anymore, but it's still technically the original building. And so I was thinking, like, if I lose my eyes, these are usually my perceptors while I'm still here. If I lose my hearing, well, I'm still here. If I can't speak, if I can't touch, if I can't feel, I'm still technically here. So I was like, how much can I take away before I've lost that connection? And there's quite a bit, which is quite interesting. Hunter, you got any thoughts?
Man, yeah, that's a lot. And I say that's a good problem to have when things are a lot, to be able to digest that. It's, I mean, the mind, I think, is, at least from what I'm hearing, is viewing our brain as the tool, and the mind is who we are. Our mind is our experiences. It's the decisions we make. It's our ways of being. It's how we view ourselves. It's how we view the world. Doesn't mean it's necessarily factual. It's our own perception. So what is the lens that we're looking through on the mental side? Anybody who's gone through a selection process knows there's a big difference between physically what you can handle and mentally what you can handle. And then your mind being what truly guides that, truly allows that, going into purpose and why and all of that. So I do like the separator, Sean, between what is the mind and then what is fact our brain, as far as the spiritual aspect side of it. Well said.
Tim, got anything on that?
I got more questions than answers to your question, brother.
Welcome to the show.
It's like I'm literally sitting here thinking and listening to all this. I'm like, all right, so when a human is in like a complete Zen state, whether it's via psychedelics, hertz, great meditation, you're feeling the vibrations of the earth. When you're really in the zone, what is that? Is that your body? Is that your soul? Is that your mind and your self-conscious working together? I'm thinking back to Mexico doing psychedelics, and I finally breathed and I finally felt good. I was able to I could feel the earth. I could see like the leaves and like living. And is that the self-conscious being your mind? I don't know. I think the brain, though, is separate, but it is a tool that you have to bypass to get to your mind and your true thoughts. And your thoughts are what is your mind. Is that confusing? I think so.
I'm tracking. Sean, what are you thinking on this?
Well, you said something interesting, Chance. You said, you know, if I lost my hearing or if I lost my sight, then, you know, what is my mind or who am I? And so let's pretend for a moment you lose all five senses. Is there a sixth sense that you can then play with? Do you have no senses left? If you have no sense of the external world, what sense do you have of your internal world? And so I think that a lot of people start from a baseline of not enough. And so if you lose your sight, you're not shored up internally. You're not secure enough internally. You don't understand yourself. You don't understand your mind enough, or your interpretation of who you are as an organism. That isn't developed enough to offset the loss of your sight, or offset the loss of your hearing, or offset the loss of your taste, etc. And so again, if for a moment we could strip out all five senses and just be left with our definition of what we are, that's kind of what our mind is. Who is Sean? What is the voice in my head that I talk to? Is that my brain? Is it my mind? Is it something else? These are all questions that I think everyone should ask of themselves. The external world, our sensors, our vision is a sensor. It's just interpreting the external world, the natural phenomenon that's flowing on a seamless timeline in front of our Mark 1 eyeballs. And what we do with that, how we register it, how we interpret it, our brain is the tool, but our mind is the thing that works on that. So strip out all senses. And what does the mind have left? It's got the internal world, at the very least, to consider. Your past experiences of when you had vision, or when you could smell, or when you could feel the wind. And so I feel that more people could spend time internally understanding their interpretation of themselves versus living too much in the external world in a video game, or racing cars around a race car track, or whatever, distractions perhaps. I think people should reconsider their orientation towards spending more time internally than living too much time externally and relying on, I hope I never lose my sight, etc.
That is a fantastic point. Tim, what do you got?
So with that, do you think, I think I misspoke a minute ago. I said that the mind or the brain, you have to bypass to get to your mind. I meant to say your brain is the gate to your mind. And if you agree or don't agree, what is it when, say, you have TBIs, you have contusions, you're missing your neuroplasticity and your neurons are diminished? Does that affect your mind, or do you not have to go through your brain to get to your mind? So many questions here.
So many questions. I'm just super digging this. I'm loving the faces on everybody's mind.
Can I
That's a mind blown face.
So I just said before we started the show in the green room, I just mentioned to everyone real quick that I'm working on a shell document. It's an outline. It's a working document that is so janky right now that I'm reluctant to show it to anyone. But it's 79 pages of a discussion purely on on stress inoculation training, or SIT. And I've defined it as a study, or my own research paper, on how situational awareness or stress inoculation training in the moment can create permanency within the mind-body connection, or the brain-body connection, however you want to view it. And so the intensity of a moment can create more permanency within the moment. Now, there's lots of science to demonstrate that. There's lots of research papers that will support that. So my idea is this, that the mind-body connection is not a linear thing. It isn't you walk out your door and your experience that day creates a simple cascade of events. What I believe is that when you step out your door, how you step out, your intentionality, your vigorous engagement within the external world, we'll call it. Let's say it is a tier 1 life engagement, the moment you step out your door. The moment that you adopt that mindset, the moment that you know that's the game you're playing, the more permanency you can create within that mind-body connection. And so the brain as a tool will do what it does. It's your job to understand how to work that tool. But the tool works best, I believe, when you create an overlay of intentionality. When you get up in the morning, do you get up and then think, okay, well, at 11 o'clock tonight, I'll be going to bed, and that's your day. No intentionality, no expectations of yourself, no desire for outcomes. You simply, I'll say it, and it's gonna be annoying. If you want to mouth breathe your way through the entire day and be completely unaware of what's going on, that's a way to live a life. But at a no cost to you, no cost, you can put an overlay of intentionality on that standard issue mouth breathing approach, and your life will freaking change, man. Your mind-body connection will change how you interact with the world, how your brain interacts with you as a tool. And it costs you not a penny. It just costs you intentionality. And that cost is simply you in a millisecond saying, all right, that's it. I understand the game now. I've got to get in the game rather than just existing in the game. So let's see where that goes.
I think the cost here is feelings. And what you're talking about, Sean, at least in my mind, and I want to pass this off to you guys here in a second, is the fact that in order to be
Sorry, Chance, in your mind or in your brain?
In my mind, specifically, it's about feeling that if I want to be in the game in something, I'm going to have to feel something, because the moment you get into something, you're going to care about it. And then once you start caring about it, that means it can be taken away at some point, or it can be damaged in some way, or it can be stripped from you. So you'd feel joy for the thing that you're doing, but also it has the capacity to be taken away from you to feel pain. And this is where I think most people don't engage that mentality, and they continue to use, I love this term, mouth breathing through their day, because they don't have to feel anything in that moment in their mind, not their brain. Let's continue passing this on. Hunter, I'm going to come to you because you got a pondering look on your face.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, there was a couple things that stood out. One, from the stress side of the house. We know stress is needed. How do we create stressful environments for people? We know, if we go to the physical training world, which Jamie is from as well, we need stress to create adaptation, whether that's physical stress, whether that's mental stress, and it has to be intentful. And then we have to then look at where we're trying to go with people. How much stress do we need to create a specific outcome? What is the environment that we're creating for the mental side, the physical side, to tie all of those in? What really helped me lay the fact, that Sean was talking about with those stressors. Do we meet people where they're at and then try to raise them to a stress? Is it, the video of John Wayne throwing the kid into the river, learning how to swim, and just being like, you're going to learn one way or another? But I think also with that, the mindset as far as around those stressors and not being a mouth breather, in shifting the mindset, not the brain set, but the mindset around things that we get to do. Here are the stressors that I get to do. I don't have to do this stuff today, but I've earned the opportunity in really shifting the mental side of it and that mind. Here are the things that I get to do. Here's the stressors I get to take on, the situations I put myself in it, and really embracing that, no matter what the other types of feelings, the joy, the fear, or whatever that may be. So, there's 5 tangents in there that we could all run down, but very appreciative. I love them all.
We got this. I say this a lot, but when we first started, there was a moment where we were like, should we just call this the tangent show? Because you could just start heading off on all the ways. Now, before I pass this on, I just want to mention there are some really great comments out here. I'm not going to derail the conversation right now, but I just wanted to let everybody know that I am tracking all these, and I really appreciate all the thoughts and comments so far. Keep them coming. This is awesome. Tim, you got any thoughts on what Hunter just put down?
I don't even know if my thoughts are in my mind or my brain anymore. I'm blown. Jeez. Now let's pass it. Let's pass it right now for this one.
Jamie, what do you got?
I'm like Tim. Like I'm just, my inner world is just swirling around right now, trying to process a lot of this stuff. So yeah, maybe I'll pick up on another thread later on. Like I'm
no worries.
Yep.
So, well, on that note, then I want to touch on this because there was a comment that came in here with a great question, and KH jumped in here. He said earlier when Sean was talking, he said, would the sixth sense be in a way muscle memory of what was and what is? And I think this is a really interesting question because to Sean's point, if I all of a sudden lost all my senses, I would still have a memory of what those things were like. And I may even try to seek them internally rather than externally at that point too. But what are you guys' thoughts on this? Sean, I'm going to hit you first.
Well, that's a really big subject. And so I don't think that we have enough time, or it would totally derail the, I would totally derail the show if I started talking about sixth sense. So I'm not going to do that. But I can stay within the constraints of our conversation today on this topic and say that I think we can use the sixth sense subject to tease the details apart between the brain and the mind. And so let's not worry about memories. Let's not worry about past experiences. Let's not even worry about tomorrow. Let's just think about who you are right now. Your brain will interpret the world around you as you sit listening to this. But your mind, and your brain, of course, is the tool, but your mind is capable of doing other things while you're in this moment, sharing it with us right now, KH, and listening. Your mind is aware of outside variables that will make you feel, I'm going to use a weird word, hinky, a little bit. There's something hinky going on with this situation. I've got a bit of a bad feeling about it. I've got a little bit of I feel like something's scratching at the back of my neck. I feel like someone's staring at my head. I feel like there's something that I don't understand that my brain and my sensors can pick up. My mind is picking up on, we'll call it a vibe that feels off. And so anyone who's ever been hunted, you will know this feeling. Even just a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit, you will know it. And perhaps you've never thought about it. Perhaps you've never used your brain to understand what your mind felt and then start teasing out the details of that feeling. And I'm not talking about instinct or gut or whatever. I believe sixth sense is something apart from your normal operating procedures of instinct. I think it's a separate envelope that we could spend a lot of time talking about, but everyone has it. It's to what degree you're aware of it and how much you've further explored it once you've felt it. So anyone who's been hunted a lot, and I'm talking about on the sidewalk as an example in your town, if you're walking down the sidewalk this way and someone is across the street walking that way, you don't even have to look at the person and you can feel someone eyeballing you from across the street if you are attuned to your environment. And so it's not your brain that is attuning. Your brain is using sensors to understand your external world. Your mind, as an example, is feeling something else other than external variables. And if we were to call our mind our sense of who we are, or what is unique about us, or our soul, or however you want to categorize it, I believe it's that understands sixth sense. It's the thing beyond the horizon that you can't see, but you can feel. It's the person across the street who's looking at you, but you don't have to look at them to know that they're looking at you. It is something apart from the five senses. Of course, it's called the sixth sense, but I don't think it's so much a brain thing as it is more of a holistic mind thing, if you will.
Tim, I'm coming to you on this one. Oh,
I was going to jump in there and ask.
What do you got, Jamie?
I was just going to ask Sean a question on that. Like, if we take that kind of thread that you were talking about there, do you think that in a world where we do a lot of things, or we have the potential to do a lot of things, which can numb all of our senses, the kind of the 5 ones, we can make ourselves like blind and deaf and just lower our sensitivity to a lot of things. Do you think that same world is numbing that sixth sense, that kind of that vibe, that ability to kind of detect a threat or whatever it happens to be when you can't really see it? And is there an intention? Do you think that we live in a world as such that where there's an intentionality to do that numbing because we don't want to pick up on those things?
Dude, that's killer. So I would say that here's my simple opinion on it. I feel that there's a lot of different kinds of people out there, and we've all been on one end of the spectrum and on the other end of the spectrum, and I'll call this end completely not tuned to the world around us, whether it's through TBI or PTSD or all of the chronic stressors or whatever, shift work, etc. Maybe there's a point in our lives where we are less attuned to our sixth sense. And then as the other end of the spectrum is you can be highly attuned. And so let's say we all operate somewhere on that spectrum. I believe that, to your question, our modern world has so much white noise on the constant basis that our external senses, our 5 senses, are dulled down or numbed down to some degree. And our sixth sense is not worked on, is not treated as a sense. It's kind of like an idea like, hey, I think Sean has some sixth sense. Wow, I wonder how he got that. Anyway, back to my newspaper. And so it's a tool. Like as a sniper, you're given 2 Mark 1 eyeballs, and you can practice to the 100-meter range, or you can practice to the 2,000-meter range. How you use your senses is on you. But if you don't strive, if you don't relentlessly pursue excellence in all things, then you can never understand how far your range is. And so I believe that to be the case for the sixth sense, this aspect that we're talking about. You only understand it as much as you have explored it. And so I don't want to make too many strange parallels between like the Force or being a Jedi Master versus a Padawan. But let's pretend for a moment that that's the thought construct that we're going to work with right now. It's a simple decision for me. I would rather be a Jedi Master than a Padawan, but you got to start somewhere. And so wherever you start, if you want more in life, that's what you're driving towards. You're driving to be a Jedi Master in whatever you want to be. Well, for me, I try to be that in everything. How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so I learned a long time ago that if I apply myself against a thing that is important to me, I will pursue it till the end. And there is no end. And so I'm on a constant pursuit. I don't know what my understanding of sixth sense will be 10 years from now. No idea. But I know I won't stop pursuing it. And so if you've never felt the hair on the back of your neck rise up when someone is pursuing you, then I'd say sit down and talk with someone who has felt it and try to understand from them how they got to that point, how they experience these things, how they know it to be true. And I'll close up with this. I think it is something that doesn't have an age limit. As an example, my boys, when they were like 8 and 9 years old, I used to take them out into the bush behind our house and say, okay, boys, head up the trail, head up the deer trail, find a spot to hide, and I'm going to come and find you with my sixth sense. I'm going to try to detect you without seeing you. I'm going to try to detect you without hearing you. Whether I smell you or not, I am going to try to feel you, boys. I'm going to use the force, is what I would tell them. And they believed me. They believed there was a thing called the force. Sorry, fellas. Sorry, boys. But they believed their dad that there was this thing called the force. And so they started working on their force. And day after day, we would build it up until they would be saying or believing within themselves that they could feel me before they could see me. And so is it a thing or not? Well, it's a thing for me. It's a thing for people that I know. And if it's not a thing for you, if you think that sixth sense is hocus pocus, then it just means that you probably haven't explored the subject enough.
This is going to take us down a whole nother road. I am for it. Don't get me wrong. But it made me think of the fact that when you're talking about the ranges for your rifle and shooting out to distances and so on and so forth, you need variables to be able to measure your shooting ability, right? If you're going to be shooting at that range, you need to be able to measure, well, how fast is the wind going? What's my rotation of speed? What's the friggin' rotation of the earth? All these things. But that doesn't make you a good sniper just because you know all those things. And to be a good sniper, there's a skill set in behind. It's that little bit of an extra piece. And I love the fact that you brought that up, because I think that is the brain mind handover. You go from the variables, I can measure all of these things, to the invariable, there's somebody in that field. And it reminded me of a time in Afghanistan where we realized that the Taliban were hunting the engineers specifically because they started putting IEDs in places that the engineers were checking. And then you start going, oh, wait a second. It's not just that I'm being, the enemy is coming after the conglomerate military, whatever it is. They're looking for you. And that, the raised hairs on the back of your head, that's 100% a real thing. Tim, you got any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, on this side of the border, we call that spidey sense, and it's when your spidey sense picks up and whatnot, and it's so true, and it's a collective of all your senses, like Sean said. It's using all your senses to sharpen your tools. So, I mean, what came to me is like I was in Jerusalem 2 years ago. It was during Shabbat. Everything was closed on Friday after a certain amount of time. I had no idea that was what happened. I was just looking for some food, and I felt like I was being followed as I was walking down the old city, and I didn't see anyone, didn't hear anything. I just felt like I was being followed, and sure as hell, I saw two people like cutting around corners and whatnot, and I just ran. I just started to ran to the embassy where I was living and staying, and that was just one small example of a spidey sense and using your senses. But that's also because you're trained, your situational awareness, you're always doing things when you're in those types of environments and being put out there, whether it's Afghanistan or Jerusalem, wherever you are. So it is how you use it. And if you don't use it, if you just stare at the TV all day, if you eat crap, your mind, your body, everything's going to be dull. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, I actually just got this comment on the Instagram site I want to bring in here, and it says, Little Woodwork said, I get raised hairs when I see abyss, be it water or the forest, but I think that's more fear mimicking a sixth sense. And I really wanted to touch on this. And Hunter, I'm going to come to you. You may not have to answer that question, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we've thrown like 8 softballs up in the air, and it's so to decide which one to swing at right now. It's again going back to the attunement. And then Jamie touched on it really briefly around the, almost numbing. And is that something that we're doing from a protective side? In other words, is there some sort of big T, little t trauma? Is there a reason why we don't want to be attuned? Going to the fear side of things, is there a reason why we do not want to become attuned? Because the last time we were, it takes us to this place. Our mind lets us go here. So being open to the attunement in the first place. What do we want to use the Jedi metaphor and the analogy? Like understanding that there's going to be some things ahead. If we want to go back to Yoda telling Luke, like when he's going to have to go into that cave in Dagobah, what he's going to have to face to come out the other side. And so that attunement may come at a cost, even if we're going to be better for it, even if we can't see that yet. But that attunement is going to be something that, unfortunately, maybe that we don't want to do. And then, Tim, you reference as well, whether it is something, I've got people in the space that have gone on, whether it's ayahuasca journeys or whatever it may be, that have become numb, even potentially not by choice, but how can I become more attuned to unlock, going back to that mind-brain connection? How can I unlock my brain to get into my mind? Because what am I protecting myself from? And so, but man, I love the attunement, and it's just like any other exercise, any other skill, the reps that which it takes. So going back to the range, it's like, how do you start building that skill set to start to work further and further away? And then knowing to ask the questions of the things to consider in. Obviously, you don't need to take in the wind when you're 20 meters out compared to those 200. And so starting to gain those skills, I mean, yeah, like I said, 8 softballs, swing at one.
Swing away, man. Swing away. Jamie, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, like just like listening to the guys here who have had kind of those experiences that civilians like myself have never come close to, and you're talking about that training and that attunement, like because of the life that you have lived and the experience that you've had, literally whether or not you are attuned and mindful and using those kind of sixth sense of what's going around you, like it's life or death. Like you have to kind of be aware, are you being followed? Like is there going to be an IED somewhere? Like those sorts of things that, like, for a civilian, like you don't have to think along those lines. Like you don't have to have that high level of attunement, or at least we think we don't. And so I wonder if, just by virtue of the life and the experiences you've lived, like you've had this level of attunement that the rest of us don't get. So in the civilian world, why do we need the question becomes, why do we need that level of attunement, and how do we get that level of attunement? Just talking about my own personal experience here, like having come from a country in the bottom of the South Pacific where hardly anyone lives, and now I'm suddenly in the middle of Europe, and it feels like all of the different stimuluses that are around me, stimuli, are like just kind of coming at me all at once. And to perhaps prevent a sense of overwhelm, you have to start kind of switching things off or dampening things down. And maybe as part of that, it's easy just to kind of isolate yourself from what's going on around you, and isolate yourself from how you are feeling, physically, how you're feeling emotionally, and just kind of shut it all down because it's so overwhelming. And I wonder how many other people in the civilian life who haven't had, that kind of mental skills training or mindset skills training are just doing the same thing. That they're just in a self-protection bubble because they don't want to listen to those sixth sense or listen to what their brain's telling them, or have that conversation, or listen to something that's going on in their bodies because it's just too much that they don't want to deal with right now.
John, I can see you got something in the, like, what do you got?
I do. I think it's going to be useful to pretty much everyone who can understand what I'm about to say. My opinion is that every single human has a sixth sense. My opinion is also that every human is constantly using that sixth sense. My opinion is also that there are a lot of humans that are unaware of what I just said. In other words, they don't know they've got a sixth sense, and they don't know they're using it all the time. So to Jamie's point, he moved from an environment where he had a handle on the white noise because it was his vibe. He liked that scene. He moves into a different environment that has a different vibe, and it's his job now to regulate that environment so that he creates the homeostasis that he had in the prior location, which of course he will do. But I believe that the goal is not to constantly seek homeostasis and then just hang out in it. Because if Jamie in Europe, gets it figured out that it just feels like, oh, this is normal. This is New Zealand again, as an example. then it's time to move on to more friction, to have a better relationship understanding with the sixth sense. So I'm going to go back to what I said. We've all got it, and it's constantly in play. And here's the devil. If you aren't aware of your sixth sense, but it is still operating every second of your life, what cognitive dissonance is it creating within your existence, within your mind, within your human experience? What dissonance is it creating that you are unaware of? Like if you stand on the sidewalk and you see a plane crash into a parking lot 2 blocks away from you, your eyes, your ears, the whole thing, you are experiencing that moment. And that will have an impact on your 5 senses. But nobody needs a plane to crash into a parking lot for their 6th sense to experience the world around them on a vibe level, on a different level of interpretation of the world around them, that they are in a moment that is not good for their soul. Your 6th sense is picking up on the vibe that this frickin' sucks right now, man, and I don't even know why. I don't have the skill sets to interpret my 5 senses. I don't have the experience to be able to rely on a body of work and understand that my 6th sense is telling me that something is way off right now. And here's why, ... If all you've got is that invisible pressure, that invisible friction and dissonance and discomfort, if that's in the background on the regular, but you're unaware of it, that ain't a brain thing. That's a mind thing, in my opinion. And so Jamie in Austria right now, all of his 5 senses can manage the day. But if his 6th sense is not attuned to the signals that he's getting from the external world, all he's feeling at the end of the day is, man, that was a hard day. And you don't even know why. We don't know why. If we're not considering that relentless friction that is behind the firewall of the 5 senses to be telling us that this is good, this is not good, and the nuances in between. I hope that makes sense.
I'm going to jump on this, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on the analogy that just clicked into my brain of this, is that it reminds me of learning cues. So in terms of the physical aspect of it, right? If I want to learn how to do a push-up, and I have never done a push-up before, I've never even seen anybody do it, somebody just described it to me, you put your hands on the ground and you lay down and then you push yourself up. Well, the way in which I do that is probably not going to be very efficient or effective, or it's not going to do the things I want to do. And if I keep doing it that way, eventually I'm going to hurt myself. I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to be in pain. My wrists or my ankles or my shoulder or my whatever is going to hurt. And I think in terms of the developing your attunement or developing your mind-body interface, that's part of the system, is learning those cues. So when we're in the military and we're learning situational awareness, all we're doing is paying attention to details. And then once you start learning how to pay attention to details, you get to a point where you don't have to actively look for details. Your brain is picking them up. And so I'm wondering, you think that's an active analogy? Because when you're teaching someone else to learn how to do a pull-up or learn how to do a particular exercise, and you're giving them cues like make sure your shoulder blades are here, to create an attunement to their own body, to line that interface. Do you think that's an accurate approximation?
No, not from my perspective, because what you're describing is a physical skill. You're describing something that anyone can understand. Here's the drill. Take a piece of paper, fold it in half, and this is how you do it. Congratulations, you now understand 6th sense. But that is not true. To understand 6th sense, the paper doesn't exist. The act that you are about to try to understand doesn't exist. The understanding of 6th sense is within you, not without you or external to you. It takes the external world as the variables or as the bandwidth or as the stimulus or as the input. It takes an external world to create these moments, but it takes an internal world to reflect on them, to try to understand what they mean to you rather than understand the sequence of events for you. And so again, a push-up is a skill that is practical, whereas sixth sense is a vibe. The dude abides. And we've all heard the saying from the Big Lebowski. And so the dude abides. What does that even mean? Well, we could spend an entire show talking about that. And we would go in all kinds of different directions. And it wouldn't be push-up based. It would be internal referential based. We would be talking about what it means to us from a deeper place than just physical movements. And so I understand what you're trying to do with the analogy, but that's predicated on an external world basis rather than the deep understanding within you, your mind, your soul, your existence, your human experience, perhaps, to categorize sixth sense as something other than a practical five senses. Hard to explain, but I hope that gets us going somewhere.
Go for it.
Can it be taught? Is I guess my question then. So my head goes to, can mindfulness be taught? Can the person going to India to seek out their guru to sit down and meditate and learn that skill? I definitely agree with you in regards to the cueing side of things. It's not black and white. It's not this. But can the environment be created? Can the cues be provided to somebody to seek the journey? In other words, if this is where we're trying to go, can enough instruction, we might not be able to give them the detailed roadmap like we would any other physical trade or whatever it may be, but can we give them, like, here's the environment. You are going to have to be the one that does them the work to get there. I can't tell you how to get there, but at least setting somebody up for success.
That's where my mind was thinking. But yeah, Sean, what do you got?
Hunter, I believe your question is the perfect question. The way you ask the question is the question that needs to be asked throughout life. That framing is framing for life. And so if someone wants to understand sixth sense, it isn't a 20-part course that anyone can take. And it won't take 3.5 months to learn. What you just said was enough for the right person to learn precisely what sixth sense means to them in 3 seconds. A word that you dropped in there was bam. That's enough for them. Now they're on their journey of exploring sixth sense. And you couldn't provide the roadmap for them, perhaps, other than the roadmap that you just provided a minute ago. So it is understanding the moment and asking a thoughtful question that plants a seed in someone's brain, we'll call it, that then allows the brain to work on the mind, and with enough inner reflection, with enough thought on things like simple koans, like if you only have one hand, can you clap? Can you make a clapping noise with one hand? Bro, what does that even mean? What are you actually saying right now? Why did you say something so dumb like, can one hand clap? Well, it's dumb until you sit down with it for a day and think about it. And now to my point, I believe that, Hunter, what you said is really powerful, but will be missed by a lot of people because no one wants to spend a day trying to clap with one hand. No one wants to take the time to understand simple questions deeply.
To that point, though, I think that's what I was talking about when I was saying cues, is that you, for the journey of self-reflection, those are the cues that I was talking about. You can say something, one word sometimes, or just a phrase, or it just a spark to get people moving. Jamie, you got any thoughts on any of this?
I'm like, with this conversation, I'm reminded of actually something I've heard just very recently with, I'm trying to learn the German language here. And I heard a language tutor say that a language cannot be taught, it can only be learned. And I think that this might be the case with what we're talking about with this kind of, this vibe, this sixth sense of no one can teach you, no one can give you a manual and say, like, you just need to do this at this cadence and so on. But they can kind of point you in the right direction and say, go on your journey, and you learn what it is in a way that you need to learn what it is, whatever that path happens to be. But it has to be the person being open to, listening to those internal cues, to exploring their external environment and exploring the relationship between your inside world and your outside world, and understanding all of that to kind of manifest that as, this vibe or this kind of high attunement level that we're talking about here. But if people are not in a place where they can be open to that, where they can learn, you cannot teach it to them. You cannot kind of just do this thing. So that's kind of what I'm hearing out of the conversation.
Loving it. Tim, you got anything on this?
Yeah, I mean, the rabbit hole's been poured open so much, and the way that the mind works, and you were talking about the cues, and then Sean was talking about it can't be a physical thing, and then my mind's going, okay, how does remote viewing work? Can people just do it, or do they have to be taught? But it's all through the mind, and it's just, my mind is blown as per normal.
So on that point, remote viewing, is it possible? You'll only know if you try. And I've been trying for a long time.
Yeah.
Long time. I've done a lot of it. I've done a lot of trying, we'll say. I'm not going to talk about my outcomes. What I will talk about is my exploration of that subject. And that's probably key to the conversation, is removing your disbelief and exploring with an open mind to see what's possible within the human experience. So is there this, is there that, does that exist, is that possible? Those questions don't satisfy me. What does satisfy me is stepping across the start line to answer the question. And so the moment I read a book about remote viewing 20 odd years ago, I was halfway through it, and that night I was trying to remote view. And I've done a lot of it, like I said. And so my understanding of remote viewing is better now than it was when I first picked up that book. As I picked it up, I thought, come on, what is this nonsense? But I tried to keep an open mind, and it's taken my understanding of my world in a broader way. It's expanded my horizons. It's expanded my understanding of what is possible and what is not possible for Sean. And so that's what we are all supposed to do, I believe, is explore who we are and what we're capable of, not just for ourselves. That is part of the game, of course, understanding us. Part of the fun game is who we are and what we're capable of. But more importantly, the higher calling is to do our best to explore ourselves, to provide the best that we can within our trajectory of life, so that we're better for everyone who's on our left and right flanks.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
When you were operating years ago, were you in tune with your mind like you are now? Obviously, I know everything. You're always continuing to learn. Everything's education. It's all a process. But were you just focusing on the physical and the true grit of, all right, this is the objective, got to get it done. Body has to do this, got to get it done. Or were you holistic back then, where you meditate, and were you in tune with your mind? And I have a follow-up on that. And it revolves around everyone here, whether you're operator or not.
So back then, I didn't understand a lot of this stuff at an intellectual level, at a research paper level, at talking with other people level. Like, none of us talked like this back then. And so I wish we could have. I wish we had have. We'd all be better for it. But my internal thoughts on this subject at the time, as I've mentioned in a couple of podcasts, when we would be doing room clearing, I was experiencing something that was more than just the physical application of room clearing. I was operating at a higher level. I was using my sixth sense. I was entering into a room, and as I said on a couple of podcasts, it's going to sound bizarre, but the moment that I'd be entering the room, I was punching forward into the next room with my sixth sense, trying to feel what was beyond the door, beyond the horizon, into the void that I couldn't understand. So I started feeling that. I just didn't understand it the way I do now. And so, succinctly, I was experiencing that back then. I just didn't understand what it was. I hadn't put a framework around it. And so I was obligated or forced or put in a position where this thing manifested into a tangible, up to my mind, a visible thing. It was my earliest understandings of sixth sense. And so from then till now, my understanding has evolved because since I learned it, I've never stopped trying to better understand it. So that's my answer. And I want to throw one more thing in here, and we're going to have to get to it. So I got to spit it out while it's on the front of my prefrontal cortex. I'd say this. There was a time in my life, and I remember the moment precisely, where I stopped thinking. Like, my brain went silent. And it went so silent that I thought I was broken. I thought my brain was broken. I thought that when I left the teams, something within me was broken because I found myself sitting in a chair and I had no thought. And I wasn't used to that. My mind, my brain, my external experiences had been at such a velocity that I had normalized the abnormal. And when I went from the abnormal to silence, as I sat in that chair, I thought my brain had stopped. I thought I was broken. And I had to do a lot of thinking about what that moment meant at that time, many years later, of course. And now I understand the pursuit of that moment as being incredibly important. When I thought I was broken, I was actually fixed in a way. The ability to sit and exist in the present moment without any white noise other than the sixth sense signal, perhaps, that is a pure pursuit of who we are as a human, I believe. That silence, that experiencing the moment for what it is, the true moment, is hard to explain until perhaps maybe you think you're broken. Anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there. We'll see where it goes maybe later.
I like it. Hunter, I'm coming to you. What are you thinking?
Again, wow. A piece that Jamie touched on was openness in regards to being willing to learn. I think we have our conscious and we have our subconscious. And so much of the time, as much as we like, man, do you really want to get into being more mindful and being able to use your sixth sense? Yeah, I do. And in the back of your mind, like, no, because I don't want to open up that door. I know what might lie on the other side. So truly being open. Like, I've got a mindfulness coach and somebody that I work with a couple times a month. And like, she will straight up ask me, like, is your subconscious ready? And I have to like think about that for a second. Like, am I actually ready to open that or unpack that or go to wherever that needs to be? Two is the process. I love the journey. Like, the only thing I need is step across that finish line and start asking those questions in all that it is, which I'm a process person. And so how do we continue to enjoy that and go into that from the mindful side of the house? That's where my mind went initially with those. And that I feel like that, again, it's just another ball in the air, but from the remote viewing side of things, it brought me to like hearing that takes me to the stance. If you like, Neil deGrasse Tyson has talked about the God gap or the gap of the gods, in which basically what we know and what we don't know. Science basically is trying to close all the things that we know. And then humans, whether it's our sixth sense, whether it is a deity, whatever it is, we try to say that is what the unknown is. And we try to give it a tangible thing opposed to really sitting and being with it. So multiple thoughts, does that help necessarily other than just create more thought-provoking things? But the last thing I think that Sean brought up is, are we willing to sit and quote unquote do the work? Is it going to take a whole day to learn about the hand that, what is the sound of one hand clapping? Because so many people, I think, and I'm as guilty as the next, what's our to-do list in regards to how do we learn something? I know by doing this, give me the roadmap, do all the work, opposed to like, I have to sit and it could take a day, it could take a month, it could take a lifetime. but am I willing to actually sit and be in my own thoughts? Yeah. So that's where my head is. Good luck with that.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with all of this, and I love the fact that you brought up the fact that most want a physical, tangible roadmap. I want to be able to do this, and this. Funny thing is that, you know, working with my psychologist, she's helped me quite a bit to do that, but internally. So she'll give me the cues, she'll give me the things that I need to look for, give me questions that I need to ask, and she does the same thing. She'll always hit me up with, how are you feeling today? You good to go? You want to go deep today? Do we really want to open this door today? And there's, over the years, I look forward to those moments. When I first started, I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. But I've started to realize that, yes, that suck is necessary. I mean, we use it in the military all the time, right? Embrace the suck. It's gonna, yeah, good. Let's take it on. Let's see how far we can go. But I think internally, because there's no physical markers, there's nothing to check. There's no box to check. Like, oh, okay, I can do 20 pull-ups now. It comes in referencing back in times of like, oh, 2 years ago, this particular situation, I would not have been able to handle well. I would have lost my mind. I would have started yelling at people. My freaking knife hand would have come out. I would have run out of the room, whatever it is. But because most people don't take the time to look back at those, 6 months ago, I was, 8 years ago, I was, down the line. It's just we don't see those markers very often. Jamie, what are you thinking?
I'm just trying to tie a couple of threads up here in my own brain, but going back to something Sean said just before, where, like, you know, entering a room, clearing a room, and his brain's already, you know, like he's extending his sixth sense into the next room, trying to anticipate what's going on, but he didn't understand, you know, what that was and had a framework around it. But he was still kind of put in an environment which kind of forced the situation of, you need to go to a higher level of attunement. You need to try and project forward as to what's going on, because things can go very wrong if you don't do that. Jumping back into kind of like civilian life, I don't think many of us are ever really put in those environments. And worse, I think we have our environment engineered around us as such that, like, we don't need to project forward for anything. We don't need to try and see what is beyond, because we've just put so many guardrails alongside us. Like, you know, you will walk here, you will cross here at this time, like, you know, we've wrapped everyone up in cotton wool. And I'm not like advocating for us to kind of rip all the crossings out and just turn it into the Wild West, but none of us are ever really put into a situation where we have to get in touch with our mind and project forward and think about what our body's doing. Trying to think of it like a real world example, you know, again, like being a kind of a, you know, a gym guy, you know, and I often talk about with friends who are coaches themselves, and work with clients who go, weight training's boring. I'm like, how can you be bored when you're balancing a horrendous weight on your back and you're trying to have that connection between, where is my body in time and space? What is it doing? Like, is my mind up to this? Like, as soon as I unlock the knees, what is going to happen? Can I like catch this at the bottom? Am I going to be able to stand it back up again? Like, there's no boredom involved. Like, there's this constant communication going on between your brain and your body, back and forth all of the time. To the point where, you know, there are times where you're like, okay, I have like my stance is good, my position's good. Something doesn't quite feel right. Like, I'm going to rack it, because you just like that vibe of, if I do this, something might go wrong. That environment that you create, where you're putting yourself under load, you're putting yourself under stress, and you're forcing that kind of two-way communication between your head and your body. Meanwhile, someone's sitting in a machine just going da 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 da. The machine's doing all of the work. Like, that's why they're bored. And so I wonder whether, you know, we've created these environments for, you know, modern society, where like there is no need for mindfulness. There is almost like no need for a mind-body connection. You can be mindless, and this is what we see with society. We see all these mindless zombies walking around because there's nothing to like connect them. There's nothing to project out, to attune to.
Bam. Dropping the mics left, right, and center here. Tim, you got any points to add?
Yeah, the one thing with what you were saying, how with your mind, there's nothing tangible to, okay, I did 5 pull-ups this week. 3 months later, I'm doing 20. What I've learned and what I still struggle with because I suck at it is journaling. Journaling, when I started my first journey and really started with my mental health and getting better, I journaled 6 months straight, every day, how I felt, what I was doing, what I was thinking, and how I was processing stuff. And then I kind of kiltered off, but every couple months I try to go back and look and like tangibly see what I was going through in my mind and seeing how I handled the situation compared to how that situation arose again months later, and how much better I'm at it now. How I didn't let this affect me, how I didn't let this bother me as much, or if I was stagnant. So that is one way. Obviously, people hear about journaling all the time, but that's one way you could tangibly track your mind and how your thoughts are and how you react to things. I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, it's a great point. Hunter, it looks like you got something to say. What do you got?
Yeah, my head goes to, thinking about, 2 different things that I think are the same thing. From Jamie describing, let's use somebody from the sport of weightlifting, snatch, clean, whatever that may be, or Sean talking about clearing a room. Does the attunement come from reps? Does the attunement come from preparation? In other words, there's an expression in regards to if you have to think about the technique, example in the sport of weightlifting, clearing a room, if you have to think about it, is it actually your technique? Because if you have to dial in so much, so does it become the master, going back to the Jedi in regards to the work that you have done, the reps that you have put in, allow you to become attuned. In something that I'll talk about with kind of novice athletes around the fact that, like, no offense from the bottom of my heart, you have not earned the right to get frustrated yet because you have not done enough reps to some extent to know what right feels like. And so where does the reps, where does the preparation, where does the process along the way then create the attunement? So I think to expect to be attuned to something, him being able to, punch through to the next room, does that happen without all the other reps and all the other preparation ahead of time? So, man, doing the work to set ourselves up to earn, but that ability to become attuned.
So I got a question on this then, and it may seem simple, but do you think that perhaps for most people, they're missing the forest for the trees, if that makes sense? Like, we're starting to seek we're looking so hard for a detail that they can track that they're not realizing they're in the middle of the friggin' woods anyway, and you may as well just start working. Does that make sense? What do you think?
Yeah, it's especially early on in regards to, it's like a baby learning to walk. Like, you don't go, stop. That looks horrible. What are you doing? You actually need to step here and swing here. It's like, how do we create that stressor? How do we create it within, like, the risk reward ratio to allow people to, like, before you start getting caught up in the details, let's start the process. Let's get your hands dirty in the first place so you can actually know what to become attuned with, opposed to like, well, why don't you just give me the answer, give me the roadmap, let me become attuned, and that'll make the whole process easier. And it's like, no, but like the beautiful like line in regards to it's something that you can learn, but you can't necessarily teach.
It brings to mind when people have limbs amputated, especially legs, and you have to relearn how to balance. You got to relearn how to walk. You got to relearn how to, like, you got to start over because the mechanics are different. And I've watched people rehab through that, and it's quite interesting because a lot of times you can see them processing, like physically processing. You got the eyes up in the corner, and they're like trying to work out where their balance is as they're going. And I think it's a great point. I think it's a big piece of this is the amount of processing that goes into learning something new that you think you knew everything about to begin with. This is a great area of conversation. Sean, I see you smirk on your face. What are you going to say?
Yeah, well, I think what we've been talking about is curiosity. And so if anyone has worked with grassroots athletes all the way through to world-class athletes, anything in between, you'll find success rates are improved. And by success rate, I don't mean how many podiums you get. I'm talking about how rapidly you evolve within your given trajectory. The thing that I see impacts the most, or top 3 thing that impacts a person the most, is curiosity. And so using Jamie's example, someone in the weight room, they've got a big stack on their back and they're doing squats, versus someone who's on a machine and is just going through the motions. And so what we have are 2 different individuals. The person with the free weights is curious. The person on the machine is less curious. When you've got a big weight on your back, you don't have a whole lot of room for error, and therefore you have to be present in the moment, paying attention to the details to remain safe. And then after you've done your squat or whatever you're doing with the weight, that person usually, if they're a curious person, will think, how can I do that next set better? How can I just toe my right foot out just a touch more to be a little bit more stable? How do I have to hinge at my flexors in order to be a little cleaner, a little smoother, a little ... better? That relentless pursuit through curiosity of how to do the next iteration just a touch better. And not to beat the person who's on the machine, but to beat yourself, to be a better version of yourself in that next set. The level of your curiosity usually creates the level of your outcome. I've never worked with an athlete who's shown success to the degree that they're proud of it if they are a non-curious person. And if they show up in front of me as a non-curious athlete or not curious enough for my liking, my job as a coach is then to help them understand their internal world to a level of curiosity that starts moving the needle, that satisfies me working with them. If you show up as a zombie, you mouth breathe your way through a week of coaching with me, see you later. I'll bounce you so fast, you'll be on fire. It'll be like you're re-entering the stratosphere. I just won't put up with it. I have no time for it. If I'm working with someone, I expect them to show up with a natural curiosity to become the best version of themselves. And if they don't have it when they show up, it's my job to frickin' create it. I feel that curiosity will take a person a long way.
And if anybody wants an example of what that looks like, you can go back to some of my early episodes of this show, and Sean definitely brought the fire to increase my level of curiosity in the show. So if you ever want an example, they are there. Now, I have a thought on this, and the corollary kind of clicked in my head was that the interface between the curious mind and the risk involved in doing whatever it is you're curious about is the same interface between the mind and the body. In that, if I want to learn a new language, I can be curious and I can seek that out, and I can push myself intellectually. There's going to be a risk there that I have, it takes time, there's sacrifice, there's all these other things. But as a physical 400 pounds, there's a physical risk to that, but there's also a curiosity there of like, can I actually lift this? Like, that's it. And finding that line between what is a bit of a risk, but keeps me curious, but it's not too much of a risk that I can't even fathom being able to accomplish that thing. And I think it applies to the mind-body connection in that, is that if I'm curious within myself, I can risk looking at areas that I'm a little less comfortable with. But at the same time, if I'm going to, on my first day of therapy, go into my deepest, darkest, worst case scenarios, I'm going to fall off the trail. I'm not even going to engage in that. I'm going to step right off and be like, nope, too much. What do you guys think? Tim, I'm going to start with you. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a hard one for me, because when I was getting out of the military, I was given a therapist. I'd go through this, blah, blah, to get med checked off, and it wasn't going well. And then I went to do things were really bad for me. And I went from 0 to 1,000 doing a Ibogaine ceremony where I did have to face every single deepest, darkest thing that I didn't even know that I had bottled up anymore. But it unlocked everything and unlocked and reset my brain to how I was going to focus and operate moving forward. And that brings back to my question to Sean about 20 minutes ago. How was your mind back in the day when you were operating? Were you in tuned? Because I wondered so many times, how would I operate differently, knowing my body, knowing myself, and knowing and understanding the surroundings so much better. And at the time I was contracting, but after that journey, I quit going overseas and doing that. And I was just wondering if that could be implemented now to our forces more and more. I know they're doing studies with DevGru and certain Delta branches and whatnot with all these therapies, but it just makes me think of how things can go differently instead of just being reps and sets and second nature. What if it's beyond?
Interesting pathway. Jamie, you got any thoughts on this?
Oh no, I think I'll sit this one out. Like again, I'm just stewing here.
Roger.
Pass.
I'll come back to you. Hunter, you got anything on the top of your head?
Nothing. I mean, same thing. This will be my pass of the day. Like there's nothing jumping at me right now.
Roger.
Well, you, Hunter, you work with special forces teams and doing physical stuff, right? Are you guys implementing mind and body stuff, or is it just physical? Are you guys introducing that more and more?
Yeah, it was, and
That's
awesome. I haven't been in that space for 3 years, but 100% like the performance psychs that I've had access to that we've worked with is very like everything's dialed in and making sure that it doesn't get gimmicky. Making sure that it's just like we're not going to do these things just to try to combine the two, but where's the actual value? Showing like it is so hard to the point that we talked about earlier. How do we measure the metric of the mind in regards to like, here's the thing, here's the tangible checklist that I can do in the real world. How do I know that I'm better at the mental game? And so really making sure that anything that we were doing was something that we could have tangible feedback based off research or whatever it was. But yeah, anytime we could. Because again, you guys know better than others. As far as very rarely, and you look at, within SF, you look at an ODA, it is not 12 guys that are physical specimens. It is 100% the mind that separates the difference between those that got through selection, that have stayed on the team, those that are actually good at what they do, so to speak. So yeah, it's anytime we could, because then it was always from the standpoint of getting into the reps and the skills that they already have. So from the physical side, how do we make sure that that's not a limitation that then pulls from the game on the mental side? Again, becoming better conditioned to allow for lower heart rates, to allow for better decision making, allow for more clarity, for the skill set of the mind to actually, for the brain to work the best of its ability.
This is going down some really interesting roads. Sean, you got any opinions on this?
Two things. First of all, I'll touch on what Hunter just said while it's fresh in my brain, and then I'll jump into a separate topic about risk-reward analysis or risk-reward benefit. And so first things first, as Hunter said, I think it's really important as an athlete or as an operator or as any high performer that you set yourself up in a way that you can offload as much stuff as possible so that you can allow your internal abilities, we'll call it your sixth sense, your intuition, your flow state, whatever you want to call it, so that you can allow that to take front and center. If you can take, if you could take an operator who can clear a room in 3 seconds and offload that as a known deliverable skill every single time, now what you've done is you've cleared the plate for their awareness piece in the moment, where they get to operate at a higher level than just the skill set, than just the practical application of ... To have more bandwidth in the flow state creates a better result than someone who has to be in the practical state, the physical skills state, the checking the boxes state. And so, as I've said before in other podcasts, when I came out of when I left computer system engineering, I'd taken sort of that tier 1 mindset, analyzed it through the lens of a computer system network engineer, and then created my own theories on working with athletes, on how I need to get them to offload certain things so they can be present in the moment and explore their potentials in the real time of who they truly are as a soulful person, for lack of a better term. So I think what Hunter said is like literally an exclamation mark for me. But I'm going to move on from that, and I'm going to talk about the risk-reward benefit or risk-reward analysis, which so few people do. I don't do it enough. And so I could do it more, but I do it. And doing it is better than not doing it, which most people don't do. Most people don't consider the moment in front of them and do a risk-reward analysis. And so, Chance, I'm going to use your example. If you had to go see a therapist and you didn't understand risk-reward benefit, then you might just like vomit out all of your problems in that first session and then walk away devastated from it with your head spinning. It could have been a backsliding moment, like a negative moment, because it wasn't framed up well by you. In the moment, it wasn't managed well by the therapist, we'll say, as an example. And now you're in a negative spot rather than a positive spot. And so I don't want to say that's on you, because it kind of is, kind of isn't. But the thought, the theory that I'm throwing out is like, don't step through any door until you've done a risk-reward analysis of the millisecond after you are crossing that threshold. Understand what you're stepping into, what your expectations are. Understand the win conditions. Understand the loss conditions. Understand a number of things thoughtfully beforehand. Now, here's the devil. If you're in the hurt locker, you don't do any of that very well. I know when I was kind of in the hurt locker, like my risk reward analysis wasn't that great because I didn't have a clear understanding of the moment when I was a little foggier, we'll call it. But it's our job to also understand that in the moment, that I'm not operating that well right now, 12 years after I left the military or whatever the case is. It's my job to recognize who I am in the moment, but also what I need to do better. And risk reward analysis is always part of that next moment in front of us. So let's see what your thoughts are on that, fellas.
I'm liking this because it goes into the line of understanding your bandwidth. Like, what are you capable of in this moment, which only comes from experience, actually comes from failing and trying something beyond your skill set at the moment, failing at it, and then having to step back and go, okay, well, this is my ability. So what it made me think of was, when I'm in a depressive state, there's things that I had to learn very quickly that it was not a good idea to attempt in that state. So, going to Costco that's absolutely packed when I'm in a depressive state, it's going to end up making it worse for me the next day. And it's part of that, as you're saying, Sean, that risk reward, but you never really know what the risk, what the outcome's going to be until you try it. And I think this is a big problem for a lot of veterans, is that they are afraid to try, or they won't try, as a preeminent of like, well, I'm pretty sure this is going to go poorly, so I'm just not going to do it. And if you live a life in that mindset, then you're never going to do anything, and it actually just, you slowly rescind away from everything else, because you go, well, if that doesn't work, then that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and that doesn't work, and you start to make these connections that devolve rather than evolve. And to that point now, when I'm in a depressive episode, I have my non-negotiables. There's things that I will do regardless of how I feel, and then there's a bunch of things that I will absolutely not do regardless of how I feel in those states. So I think it comes through that experimentation, at least from my experience. Hunter, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, it's, I mean, well, there's two main things that come to mind. Well, two or three, but it's going back to, I think, to some of the stressors early on in regards to what we're incorporating within people. Like, are they ready to be put in those environments? In other words, whether it's training, whether it is meeting with a psychologist or whatever it is there's a difference between diving deep into some things compared to, let's start off with what brought you in. Let's start off with your name. Let's start off with whatever it is to get comfortable and build the skill of doing all that, to build the reps, to build the experience. From there, going into like the mind is like a tricky thing, like the stories that we tell ourselves in regards to so many different things from a protective standpoint. So yeah, it's starting to spin a little bit on that, but it's I go to the physical side of it, but also then the who, not how. In other words, who can I find that can help offload some of those things, to talk about who, from learn the skills to be able to do those things. So advocate for coaches, for people doing it right, to make sure you set people up for success, including yourself.
Bam. I like it. Jamie, what are you thinking?
Yeah, just going back to a couple of things that was mentioned before about kind of creating space and just reducing noise and expanding the bandwidth that people have. I mean, as a coach, one of the kind of almost near ubiquitous things that I see with the people that we work with is whether you are trying to deal with physical skills and then, you know, some mental skills concurrently, or just mental skills by themselves. People are just up to their eyeballs in so much kind of noise going on around them. And I think kind of that first step over the line for many people is thinking like, what can you strip out? Like, where can you reduce the load? Where can you reduce the noise? Where can you create some space to allow your body, like whether it's a physical thing or like a mental thing, emotional thing, to allow the room for you to explore and be curious and develop, because you simply cannot go down those pathways if you've got like 10 other things on the go in the back of your brain. It's just not going to work. And yet, like, it is the norm now, and almost encouraged, I guess, to a degree, to be loaded up and doing a million things that you probably don't need to be doing. And so I think it's like it is a very, very important important first step to almost kind of take a via negativa approach of like, let's strip some things out, like less is more, and then start the journey into kind of listening to what your mind is saying, or listening to what your body's saying, and getting, some sort of therapist or coach or whatever modality it is that's going to help you explore the things that you need to explore. But yeah, just people, there's no room. There is just no room in a lot of people's lives, and until you create that space, then it's very difficult to kind of make any start with this journey.
Can you add anything to the teacup if it's already full, kind of deal? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tim, any thoughts?
Yeah, that kind of goes into what Sean's writing about, and working in the red and having the high stress and figuring that out, and figuring out how you can, like Jamie said, clean up and offload some I mean, if you're doing everything and it's important, you still have to prioritize so you could focus on one thing, first objective. So yeah, it's just interesting, and it all depends on what people have in their life and what's important to them and what their goals are.
And understanding what's important is first steps for sure. Sean, what do you got?
Two things. First thing is, and I'll throw it out there, is the impactor. This should not ruffle some feathers, but it should make some people sit back and really think, I believe. I think one of the critical issues, as everyone has been mentioning here, is I'm going to refine it down into a simple sentence. You got to learn to value yourself more. We all have to learn to value our time. I need to value myself for the value that I believe I have to Sean and to those around me, of course. But if I'm no good to me, then I'm no good to everyone around me. And so it's my job to figure out how to value my time. And what is my time worth to me and to others? And if I don't understand the value of time, then our day, our life will get away from us. So as I said to my pal here yesterday, I'm down here for a week. I could be anywhere in the world for a week. I could be hanging out with anyone for a week. But I choose to hang out with my pal down here because we have a long track record of doing things together. He's done enough in his life after the military that when we hang out, we explore our mutual worlds, both intellectually and soulfully. So when I come down here for a week, I value the time enough that I will not do other things in my life. I will hang out down here with him. And to the casual observer, it will appear that we aren't really creating much. I mean, we're not solving world peace down here right now. We're just two old dudes hanging out. But how you hang out, how you do one thing is how you do everything. How you hang out, the result after a week, for me, will be freaking magnificent. And so one of the reasons I come down here is to explore myself through the lens of my friend, who I've known since 1987. And our relationship is strong enough, and our depth of exploration throughout a variety of different trajectories in the world has been broad enough that I'm not flying down here to visit a zombie mouth breather. I value my time enough that I am very selective without how I use my time. And so now I'm going to go double dip Inception. I'm down here, quote unquote, on a vacation for a week. But within my vacation, I am spending 2 hours talking to you guys. And so why would I do that? Why would anyone do that within their vacation, as it were? Because I value this time more than I value not doing it. My gain in this conversation is what you all bring to the table, your wisdom. It's my job to be better after this conversation, not just for myself, but for others. And so when I step into this conversation, I have to give up something else. I'm giving up time hanging out with my buddy. I'm giving up time hanging out with my friend, with my other friends, with my family. I'm not scratching my dog's ear right now in my comfortable chair back in Roslyn. All intentional choices by me with a view to outcomes that are making me and the world around me better. And so everything has a cost. You take a week here, you've got to give up a week there. And that is life. There is no 25 hours in a day. You have to use your time wisely. And I feel that while people are understanding their risk-reward benefits, while they're understanding sixth sense, while they're exploring bandwidth and depth and all of the good things, understand that we're all going to frickin' die, man. And for a dude who's 61, it'll be sooner than most of you. And so my time is, as I get into the back phase in my life, my time becomes even more important. And so I view a lot of the things that I do in the world nowadays as minutes on the watch that I am giving up to do this in order to achieve that. And nowadays it's less about Sean being emperor of the world, and it's more about the empire that he's in, just doing a little bit better. As a young buck, I didn't understand that. I was just out there to kick that ass. Now as an old dog, I'm in the game to help others kick ass that helps me understand the world a little bit better around me.
Yeah, this is the intentionality in that is really key. And I was actually speaking to my massage therapist about this earlier, was the fact that I think we as a society, especially in the Western world, we numb ourselves with things that we can't control, right? People think about the international political spectrum, or they think about the stuff that's happening on the other side of the world, or the things that are going on, blah, 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 without actually focusing on what's important, which is right here. And it's a consistent challenge to be able to bring yourself back, because it's so easy to distract ourselves with garbage that's just coming in all the time, especially through our little magic boxes that used to be sci-fi that are now in our pockets. So like it's a thing. And I just want to say thank you guys, because we are just about 2 hours now, and I can't thank you enough. This has been an outstanding conversation. Hunter, Tim, Jamie, Sean, thank you. I wish I could get to all the comments. I want to just throw this out there to all the people that have been hanging out with us and dropping comments and questions and all these kinds of things. They've been fantastic. I'm going to be putting these up eventually on social media so people can look at them and consider their own thoughts and get involved in the conversation at later dates. Thank everybody. This has just been outstanding. So with that, let's get some final thoughts. Anything still left rattling around in your brain after this? We talked about everything. So let's start with Jamie. Any final thoughts?
Jeez, we've done a lap of the solar system, haven't we, with this one? I just pretty much my mind is blown right now. Like I've got a lot to process in my brain and think about this. I know kind of Sean was talking there about valuing time, and it's semantics for me. I always think about my life in terms of energy, like valuing my energy, and what do I put my physical energy into, what do I put my emotional energy and mental and spiritual energy, and coming on this show with you guys, it's like to be kind of dropped in the hot seat and going, you talk about a topic that is pretty mind blowing, takes a lot of mental energy, but I know the payback on the other side of it is going to be huge. So I just want to say thanks for the opportunity of being on the call with you guys and expanding my world.
Absolutely. I think we're all going to need a nap after this one.
Oh, for sure.
Yes. Tim, you got any final thoughts?
Yeah, like Sean said, like memento mori is what comes to mind. Mortality is inevitable. Death is coming. Live your life intentionally and all that. So it's beautiful. And throughout these shows that I've been on with you guys, from the beginning of my business and starting my venture, Sean's always been like, you can't be giving all this for free. You can't be doing this, even though it's all good intentions. So I've changed my prices. I value my time more so I can prioritize and focus more on, if somebody wants to do a custom project, it's worth my time. And I will put a whole lot more into it. And now I'm putting that into building a nonprofit to help others in different ways. So I've learned so much on this show, and just conversing with you, Chance and Sean, like it's just so valuable. And the fact that you are taking the time of your day every week doing these shows, and Sean on vacation right now, like invaluable. You guys are great. I'm glad to meet you, Jamie and Hunter. And I think I hit you guys up on socials today when I saw that you guys were going to be on the show. So keep in touch.
This is the beauty of the community, man. The collective as a whole has just grown immeasurably, from people linking up to businesses collabing, and like it's been wonderful to see. And I'm loving every minute of this. Hunter, any final thoughts?
Appreciation. First and foremost, one to you guys. It never fails me, Chance, to see all the work and everything else that you guys are doing and what goes into productions like this to get people together. And then, from Jamie and Tim to you guys to step on here. And we talk about time and energy, whether it's from an abundance or a scarcity standpoint, how it is viewed. But you can always tell a lot about people by where they put that energy and where they put that time. So appreciation first and foremost. But no, man, the mind-body connection. I think the big thing that I'm taking away from today is how connected it is, and then how much purpose, how much intent that we need to step into those things with. And then even when all of those things align, giving into the universe a little bit in regards to the results, like embrace the process, embrace the journey. And that's kind of where the magic happens.
Love it. Sean, any final thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, fellas. It was a great conversation, and I'd love to speak for another 5 minutes, but I know we need to wrap up here. And the 5 minutes that I would take would be spent admiring each one of you. Saying thanks to the work that you guys do within your own communities, within our community. And so I think I'm with Hunter. I'm just gonna go the gratitude direction. How much I've gained from this conversation, from all of our prior conversations. We've spoken to all three of you on a number of occasions. I always look forward to seeing you guys. I look forward to the unknown thoughts that I'm going to provide in the real-time moment in these conversations, wherever they come from. They arrive in the conversation as I try to keep an open mind and let it flow. But honestly, if I can point a finger at the things that I say in a podcast, it's really just thoughts that come from you guys. My ability to just talk or think or be slightly wise is a result of doing this all my life, listening to good people, thinking about their thoughts and how it interacts with my life and how it frames up my understanding of the world. If you're surrounded by freaking mouth-breathing zombies who are losers, if that's your community, that's how you think. And it is so easy to step from a community into another community in your mind. It might take you a week or a month or a year to embed yourself in a new community that is positive, forward-thinking, performance-based, good humans. It might take you a year to get into that community, but it'll take you a millisecond in your mind to nod at yourself and say, that's what I'm freaking gonna do. I'm gonna pursue the best version of my life for the rest of my life. That is just a thought that is the seed of action that may take a year to show up as you sitting in a chair talking to freaking cool people. But it's all on you. None of this stuff happens by daydreaming. It only happens through intentional pursuit of excellence.
Yeah. I don't have a ton to add. The only thing I was thinking of was the vibe check. I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but those communities are gonna check a box in your mind. They're gonna feel the vibe of just like, man, this is where I want to be. And it happened to me with the equine community, working with horses and being around cowboys, and like those type of people, they click with me. These type of people, you guys click with me. The people on the mats, they click with me. Like, find your vibe, but you got to be curious enough to seek it. Otherwise, you'll just sit on the couch all day, every day. And so, yeah, I can't thank you guys enough. This is, I get to come out of these. Tim, you mentioned earlier the fact that, like I put all this work in and doing these shows constantly and producing all this stuff. And you guys have no idea how much I gained from this and how much I've grown from these last couple of years and all these conversations, and just being able to hang out with you guys and chat and learn just makes my days fantastic. So as I learn, build, and grow, we all learn, build, and grow. We'll see y'all next week. Chimo. Thanks everybody for watching and being part of the collective. If this has sparked any thoughts or resonated with you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us grow and keeps the conversation going. We'll see y'all next time. Bam.